Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack some really compelling sources and bring the key insights straight to you. Today, we're jumping into a specific day. August 4, 2025. It was packed. High-stakes politics, economic shifts, humanitarian stuff, and there's many surprising cultural moments. Okay, let's unpack this. Our aim here is really to cut through all the noise, connect some dots for you, and help you get the big picture fast, and maybe some of those unexpected details, too.
Exactly. And what's fascinating, I think, is how connected a lot of these things are, even when they seem totally separate. So we're not just giving summaries. We'll try to offer the broader context, the implications. Basically, not just what happened, but really why it matters.
Okay, let's dive straight into the U.S. then. Because August 4th, 2025, it started with some pretty dramatic political stuff in Texas. We're talking about this fight over congressional redistricting really hitting a boiling point. Get this. At least 51 Democratic legislators out of 150 actually fled the state, like went to Illinois, New York, Massachusetts. Yeah, it's a tactic called quorum breaking, basically trying to stop a Republican-led map change by, well, not being there.
Right. We've seen that playbook before, haven't we? In places like Wisconsin, even Texas itself in previous decades.
Exactly.
And the stakes here were, incredibly high. Governor Greg Abbott, the GOP leadership, they were pushing hard for this new map. They figured it could net them maybe 5 extra U.S. House seats heading into the 2026 midterms.
So the Democrats just left to stop it. I mean, that's a bold move, but what are the sort of strategic implications there beyond just stopping one vote? Does it work long-term, or could it backfire?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, tactically denying quorum is powerful. It stops things cold. But this kind of brinkmanship, it often comes with a significant political cost. You saw Governor Abbott immediately dispatching the Texas Rangers.
Right, the warrants.
Exactly, issuing civil arrest warrants, trying to physically bring them back. That really escalates things, for legislative protest. Republicans, naturally, saw the map as crucial for power. Democrats framed it as blatant voter suppression, gerrymandering. And the fallout started immediately. Calls for lawsuits, ballot initiatives, even California's Governor Newsom chimed in, threatening retaliation if the GOP map went through.
So it could really deepen the polarization we're already seeing.
Oh, absolutely. It turns legislative fights into these, fundamental clashes over democratic rules themselves.
Okay, and as if that wasn't enough drama for one day. Also on August 4th, President Trump fired Erica McIntyre. She was the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS. And this happened right after a pretty dismal July jobs report, only 73,000 jobs added. And big downward revisions for previous months, like 285,000 jobs actually lost when they looked back.
Yeah, that was one of the weakest reports in quite a while. Unemployment ticked up to 4.2%.
And Mark Zandi from Moody's Analytics basically said the economy was on the precipice of recession, cited flat consumer spending, manufacturing, contracting.
And the firing itself. Immediately controversial, Jamison Greer, the U.S. trade rep, defended it. But critics, like William Beach, a former BLS commissioner, they argued it just shreds trust in that vital economic data. We even had some unemployed senators asking, are future policies going to be based on data someone just tweaked for political reasons? Economists warned, look, this shakes confidence in government stats. That's the bedrock for setting monetary policy. International investors started noting the risks too, institutional interference. Analysts flagged the uncertainty. It could raise long-term risk premiums.
So the actual integrity of the data is being questioned at home. How does that skepticism, ripple outwards? Yeah, especially when we look at global markets. Because weirdly, despite all this domestic turmoil, global stocks actually had a strong rebound on August 4th, recovered from the previous week's sell-off.
Yeah. S&P
500, NASDAQ, Russell 2000, all up sharply, tech, small caps leading.
It is a fascinating contrast, isn't it? The rebound seemed mostly tied to Fed watching. Markets were pricing in an 87% chance of a rate cut in September. Sentiment improved for European banks too, Deutsche Bank and others. Yeah. But the caveat is exactly what you said. Analysts were already warning political interference, like firing the DLS chief, could dampen investor confidence down the line. That tension between political goals and the perceived integrity of economic data, it's a fundamental for investor trust. Any hint of meddling can really affect capital flows, market stability. It's a big deal.
Okay, let's zoom out from the U.S. internal stuff then to the global stage. International relations, conflicts, always moving. On August 4th, there were intensified efforts around a ceasefire in Ukraine. The U.S. sent Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to Moscow, described as last chance talks, There was this Trump-imposed deadline for Russia, agree to a ceasefire by Friday or face new sanctions.
Right. This followed months of stalemate, basically. Growing international pressure. Previous truce attempts hadn't really stuck or were only partial.
So what was the vibe?
Well, the Kremlin officially welcomed Witkoff. Ukrainian officials, Zelensky, his aide, Andriy Yermak, they sounded, let's say, cautiously optimistic. But Kyiv was very clear. No trading territory for peace. Yermak also criticized Russia for dragging its feet, highlighting that deep mistrust.
So a lot riding on these talks.
Huge. It wasn't just about Ukraine's borders. It was a test, really. Can global powers still de-escalate through diplomacy? Or are we just in an era where conflict momentum overrides everything? The outcome felt, pivotal for European security.
And speaking of European security, making things even more complicated, also on August 4th, Russia's foreign ministry announced it was ending its own moratorium on deploying intermediate-range missiles.
Oof, yeah.
They directly blamed NATO's, quote, anti-Russian policies and U.S. missile systems in Europe and Asia. Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, even warned about further steps and told adversaries to consider the new reality.
That's not subtle.
Not at all. It immediately sparked fears of a new arms race. Drew condemnation from Western NATO members. Dangerous escalation, they called it.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture, lifting this moratorium, especially with Ukraine ongoing, it just fundamentally changes the whole strategic calculation for Europe. It really highlights how fragile arms control agreements are when tensions get this high. It basically opens the door to a pretty dangerous new arms buildup.
Okay, shifting focus to another major hotspot. The Israel-Hamas hostage crisis. That really intensified on August 4th as well. Prime Minister Netanyahu was emphasizing a military solution for the remaining hostages. This was happening even as ceasefire talks, some apparently brokered by Witkoff again, seemed to be faltering.
Right, and Hamas released these really disturbing videos of emaciated hostages around the same time.
How are reactions playing out?
Very divided. Within Israel, you had families protesting, demanding a renewed diplomacy. But then you had the hawks pushing for more military pressure. Internationally, reactions were mixed too. It just keeps showing the awful human cost of these long conflicts and how incredibly hard it is to find a way out, with pressures coming from all sides.
And another humanitarian angle. Pakistan, on August 4th, resumed forced deportations of Afghan refugees. We're talking potentially 1.4 million people whose legal status had expired.
Yeah, this included mass detentions, deportations happening despite appeals from the UN, humanitarian groups. Even people with Afghan citizen cards were facing expulsion.
In context here is millions fled to Pakistan after Kabul fell in 2021.
Exactly. Critics argued this move just further destabilizes Afghanistan under the Taliban. It drew international condemnation. It really highlights the terrible security situation in the region and raises huge questions about, international responsibility for refugees and the massive challenge of handling displaced populations, often in already fragile places.
But there was some positive diplomatic news, right? Cambodia and Thailand.
Yes, a glimmer. They held their first cross-border talks since a ceasefire the week before. Delegations met in Kuala Lumpur on August 4th, trying to resolve these long-standing border issues. Key players were there: Cambodia's Machnen Songsoka, Thailand's Ltgen Nutapong Praokai. Malaysia was mediating. They even discussed demilitarized zones.
What's the outlook?
Cautiously optimistic was the word. Hopes that maybe this could be a model for other regional hotspots. It's a good sign. Shows dialogue is still possible, even after conflict. A necessary step.
Okay, switching back to economics, but on the global stage. India, on August 4th, came out strongly against new U.S. tariffs on Indian goods, called them unjustified and unreasonable. India's Ministry of External Affairs even accused the U.S. and EU of hypocrisy, basically saying, you trade with Russia, but penalize us.
Right, and this dispute threatens some key Indian industries, textiles, automotive parts, especially tough with the global economy already flashing recession warnings.
So, potential disruption.
Definitely. Indian business leaders were calling for countermeasures. It just complicates global efforts to stabilize supply chains at a really tricky time. This kind of trade friction layered on top of everything else can really snowball.
Okay, so beyond the big geopolitical moves, August 4th also gave us a window into internal struggles within nations. Governance, justice, social responses, like in Brazil. The Supreme Court there, on August 4th, put former President Jair Bolsonaro under house arrest.
Yeah, that was big news.
Said he violated court orders, cited his use of social media, possible incitement. He's faced a ton of legal issues since leaving office.
So now he's confined. Restrictions on phone use, visitors. His allies immediately cried foul, called it political repression.
And opponents
Saw it as necessary accountability. Public opinion, as you'd expect, deeply split. Observers warned it could ramp up polarization ahead of the next elections, really testing the judiciary's independence.
Interesting that even the Trump administration criticized it.
Yeah, showing some international alignment there, or at least shared concerns about what they see as judicial overreach.
You mentioned polarization. How do these internal challenges in a country like Brazil maybe reflect broader global trends in, say, democratic accountability?
It's a really good question. And you do see similar patterns elsewhere. Like in Ivory Coast, the main opposition party, on that same day, August 4th, condemned what they called arbitrary arrests of 6 members. This was happening in a pretty tense pre-election atmosphere. The opposition accused President Ouattara's government of suppressing dissent.
And the reaction.
Human rights groups, foreign diplomats, they all expressed concern, urged respect for legal norms, warned it could undermine trust in the upcoming election. So yeah, these actions kind of underscore how fragile democratic institutions can be in many places, where the rule of law gets challenged pretty quickly when power's on the line.
And August 4th, 2025 was also the 5th anniversary of that horrific Beirut port explosion.
Right, a somber day.
Hundreds gathered, apparently expressing just deep frustration with the government's inaction, the stalled investigation into the 2020 tragedy, blaming corruption.
And those protests, they reflect much wider dissatisfaction, don't they? Rooted in the economic crisis, sectarian tensions. Observers basically say public trust isn't coming back without some real legal consequences, some accountability. And what these stories really show is this powerful feedback loop, right? When trust in government breaks down, maybe from a botched investigation, maybe a failing health system, it creates this environment where crises, humanitarian or political, don't just happen, they kind of accelerate. It shows how one disaster can expose and worsen all these deeper problems, leading to lasting unrest.
Shifting to another really dire situation, the World Food Program reported on August 4th that Afghanistan was seeing its sharpest ever surge in child malnutrition.
Devastating.
Severe acute malnutrition hitting crisis levels, attributed to, well, everything. Decades of conflict, drought, economic collapse, less international aid, collapsing healthcare.
And it hits displaced families the hardest. International agencies urged immediate aid, of course. But experts warned, look, without political stability, without economic recovery, any relief is just going to be short-term. It really underlines Afghanistan's massive governance and humanitarian challenges, how interconnected they are, and just how fragile people's well-being is without stable institutions.
And closer to home, there was that awful tragedy in Montana. On August 1st, just before the 4th, this former Army veteran, Michael Paul Brown, opened fire at the Owl Bar in Anaconda.
Yeah, that was terrible.
Killed the bartender, Nancy Loretta Kelly, and 3 patrons. Daniel Edwin Bailey, David Allen Leach, Tony Wayne Palm.
And then he fled.
Yeah, fled. Triggered this huge multi-state manhunt. Law enforcement called him armed and dangerous. Just a sobering reminder that even amidst all the global stuff, personal tragedy hits hard.
Absolutely. And that incident immediately reignited all those debates, didn't it? Mental health support for veterans, gun control, public safety, especially in rural areas. It really focuses attention on the gaps in support systems and the ongoing challenge of gun violence, particularly where resources might be limited.
And finally, for this segment, a really poignant moment from Japan. August 4th, right in the middle of the Hiroshima Remembrance period. Aging survivors, the Hibakusha, were sharing their firsthand stories, really pressing again for nuclear disarmament.
And their pleas feel especially urgent now, right? With nuclear powers modernizing arsenals, treaties being abandoned.
Exactly. They're emphasizing the grave human consequences if nuclear weapons were ever used again.
It's a powerful, timeless message. Those peace rallies, the education efforts trying to keep their history alive, it's crucial. A reminder of the past and a warning for the future.
Okay, next up, let's explore some pressing environmental challenges, public health issues, and maybe some of the more unexpected stories from August 4th. By that day, the smoke from those massive Canadian wildfires, hundreds of them, started back in May in Manitoba, Ontario, Saskatchewan. It had spread right across central Canada, the Great Lakes, even the northeastern U.S.
Yeah, hazardous air quality, those eerie orange skies.
Over 17,000 people evacuated just in Manitoba. Whole communities like Denair Beach in Saskatchewan reportedly destroyed. the military had to step in.
And predictably, it reignited all those debates about climate change adaptation, forest management.
How prepared are we?
Exactly. It forces us to look at whether our infrastructure, our emergency responses are actually ready for this kind of new normal, this intensity.
And South Asia was also really struggling with climate impacts. As of August 4th, there was lethal flooding along the Nepal-China border, killed at least 9 people, destroyed key infrastructure.
Including the main bridge connecting the two countries, right? Halted vital trade.
Yeah, and it's part of that pattern. South Asia, Nepal, Pakistan, northern India, just getting hammered by repeated weather disasters, climate change, deforestation, poor infrastructure, all playing a part.
Climate experts were pointing to the frequency, the intensity, saying, look, this is clear evidence of global warming.
Yeah.
Intensifying calls for, serious adaptation measures, better early warning systems, international support.
It raises that question, doesn't it? How do these global environmental public health challenges connect with broader economic and political stability? What does it mean for, resilience in this changing world?
Absolutely. You see the direct link between climate, livelihoods, and health, and then how something unexpected like that parasitic outbreak we'll get to can just have massive economic consequences. It's all interwoven.
Okay. Turning to another humanitarian crisis, Gaza. Health officials there reported at least 8 deaths from hunger on August 3rd, the day before. Cumulative deaths nearing 188 since the start of the year.
Yeah, humanitarian agencies warning of outright famine-like conditions. Continued fighting, border closures stopping aid.
And the international community?
Divided, some pushing Israel to let more aid in, others urging Hamas to release hostages. It's just a stark illustration of the devastating human cost when conflict drags on and politics block relief. Civilians caught in the middle.
In other weather news, slightly less grim, Tropical Storm Dexter formed overnight before August 4th. 4th named storm of the 2025 hurricane season. Early forecasts looked like it would stay offshore. Conditions weren't great for it to intensify much. So likely no U.S. landfall, which was reassuring.
Still a reminder, though, right? For islands nearby, maritime traffic, stay alert, check those emergency plans. Peak season was coming.
Now, about that parasitic outbreak, Mexican ranchers were facing a major livelihood crisis. Mid-2025, this flesh-eating New World screwworm parasite was found in cattle down there.
Ugh, nasty.
And the U.S. response, suspended live cattle imports immediately.
Right.
Which just devastated ranchers in southern Mexico.
Right, and that immediately sparks debates about veterinary surveillance, cross-border cooperation, and just the sheer vulnerability of agriculture to these kinds of disease outbreaks. The economic fallout can be swift and huge for an entire industry.
And on the pharma front, interesting development. The Swiss company Sandoz was apparently considering selling generic weight loss drugs in Canada starting in 2026.
At much lower prices.
Yeah, potentially undercutting the big brand names significantly. This came after Canada changed some regulations to speed up generic approvals, plus just the huge global demand for anti-obesity drugs.
That could definitely put pressure on U.S. drug companies to rethink their pricing. Could really reshape the whole competitive landscape for weight loss treatments globally. It shows how health issues, economics, policy, they all intersect and can drive big changes, maybe even making important meds more accessible.
Okay, finally, let's look at some shifts in the business world and a couple of surprising cultural notes from August 4th. First, it came out that day that Deutsche Bank CEO Christian Sewing had approved a massive $1.5 billion corporate deal that was now under investigation.
Oh.
Regulators were looking into the approval process, potential conflicts of interest, a part of wider EU financial oversight reforms.
Yeah, market analysts were saying that probe could really damage investor confidence, might even trigger broader corporate governance reforms in European finance. It just highlights that ongoing scrutiny of big banks and how vital transparency is for stability.
And speaking of big finance moves, Visa was reportedly planning to move its European HQ from London's Paddington area to Canary Wharf.
Interesting. Why?
They cited operational concerns linked partly to new U.S. tariffs on Switzerland and other places, and just the shifting global trade dynamics.
So that really shows how these big picture things like Krekenuk border tariffs, geopolitical shifts, especially post-Brexit, they have very real consequences for where big companies decide to set up shop. Boost for Canary Wharf, I guess.
Definitely. Now, for something completely different, tennis. Emma Raducanu, the British star. She was suddenly at risk of losing her seeding for the 2025 U.S. Open.
Oh, really? How come?
On August 4th, news came out that her early exit from the Canadian Open dropped her live ranking from 33rd down to 38th, which is just outside the seeding cutoff for the U.S. Open.
Wow, and she won the U.S. Open as a qualifier back in 2021.
Exactly.
I bet.
famously. Now, she faced maybe having to play top seeds really early on, needed some strong results in Cincinnati or other lead-up tournaments.
It just lays bare the brutal reality of pro sports rankings, doesn't it? One tournament can totally change your path at a major. Shows how much precision, momentum, how crucial they are at that level.
Okay, and for maybe the most unexpected story of the day, Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
Yeah, the Canadian Prairie Province. Not exactly, top of mind for global tourism.
Fair to say.
Suddenly found itself in the international spotlight. Why? It got featured in some heartbreak-themed pop song that went viral.
You kidding?
Nope. The song blew up and apparently led to this rapid spike in tourism interest for Saskatchewan. Local businesses, officials scrambling to capitalize on it.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? It's just a wonderful example of how pop culture can have this totally tangible, unexpected economic impact, putting a spotlight on a place maybe few people had thought about visiting before.
And that really illustrates it, doesn't it? These stories, from corporate HQs moving to a pop song boosting tourism, they show all the diverse, sometimes really unpredictable forces shaping things beyond just the big headlines about conflict and politics. Highlights the fluidity of global finance, sure, but also the, frankly, surprising power of cultural trends to shift perceptions and even economies. Proves the world is full of these unexpected connections.
So we've taken quite a deep dive into August 4, 2025. Covered a lot of ground: political brinkmanship in Texas, economic jitters, geopolitical chess games, really pressing humanitarian crises, and yet even the surprising power of a pop song. We really hope you found some aha moments in there and maybe got a quicker but still thorough handle on just how complex our world is.
Yeah, because this collection of news, all from just one single day, it really underscores that the world isn't just isolated events happening in silos. It's a dynamic, interconnected system. Actions in one area, politics, the economy, even pop culture, they inevitably ripple out and affect others. So as you reflect on these stories, maybe consider how these moments from August 4, 2025, moments of tension, resilience, unexpected opportunity, how might they ultimately shape the longer-term path of global events, of the human experience? What does it maybe tell us about those threads connecting our local actions to much bigger global consequences? Something to think about.